طيب بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Firstly, thank you for hosting me. This is the first time I'm coming to Bristol. Got to see the hanging or suspended bridge, or your hanging bridge for me from Canada, and the muddy river that you guys have running underneath it. You can't see anything in that. And then where did we go? We had Wall's ice cream, which is like something I did when I was a child. You know, Walls became very big in Saudi Arabia when I was growing up there. But anyhow, it was fun. I've been invited by the person, Maulana Najib, initially. Like he's the first one who introduced me to the UK market. And then this time we're coming through Like Media. Rehan, Jazakallah khair for hosting me. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He puts barakah in everybody's efforts. We all are trying to do our little to help deen. And the real question that we should be asking ourselves is, whatever we can do, we do it to the best of our abilities to help the deen. Even if it is just, you're doing small thing like taking somebody, you can't attend the lecture, but you allow him to come into your car and drop him off to a lecture. You might have a job or you might have a part-time thing to do, but you can drop somebody off and pick him up when you're leaving. So small things, but they matter a lot. Today's topic is Star Bright, Starlight. You guys are aware of this, Starlight, Star Bright, Star. So the lullaby itself, it came into existence into the English sphere around the 19th century, and it became quite famous in the early 19th century in UK, specifically in England. And then afterwards it went on and it became like a global phenomena. Like most of the lullabies, they started here, and then it just as more and more colonized countries took over and adopted English language, so did the tradition of these lullabies pass down. But if you look at it, lullabies, they've been there for the longest periods of time, right? Even in Islam, we have that. We have lullabies to put babies to sleep, and you have these sounds that a child, when he grows up, he starts doing that. He starts doing like la la la, the first sounds that the child produces, and that's why most of the lullabies that you'll find in the Arabic tradition or in the Aramaic or the Hebrew tradition are they have a lot of L sounds in them, because it causes some sort of resonance in ourselves. And that's why we have, for example, our kalima, la ilaha illallah. Like it's written in a way that even a small child, if you ask him to pronounce, even somebody who becomes a Muslim convert, you tell him la ilaha illallah, he can do that. Muhammadur Rasulullah, he gets stuck at. Right? He's like, muha, he doesn't. But you say la ilaha illallah. So they can do that. So lullabies have significance. We have a lot of du'as that are found in the tradition of Prophet ﷺ, pertaining to sleeping. As a matter of fact, most of the famous du'as, I have recorded them on like an audio, like a professional recording. So I use them to put my kids to sleep. All right. So and then later on, I think the last tour we did, we shared them. So I'll probably share it with you, and you guys can share it with the iSocks. It's just like you can have it on your phone. Not the best voice, but it'll do. It'll do the thing. So coming back to the lullaby. If you guys want to pull up that lullaby, I'm not going to put up the screen because it's a dark room and it's just going to be in my eyes. So Star Bright, Starlight. See, every single person in their lives, they are in a struggle to become some sort of a star, right? You're coming to universities because you want to be either a doctor or an engineer, or if you're in this building, I think law. This is a law school or law building. So if you're in this building, you're studying law, and you're sitting with the professor around in one of the halls that we just saw, those guys sitting there, and you're trying to become something, right? And this quest of becoming something, or this quest of coming out of the darkness of unknown to the presence of I become a public figure, is something that drives each and every one of us, intrinsically and extrinsically. Intrinsically, we want it's human nature. We want to have that. But the interesting part, that if you look at how stars come out, and when do they come out? When the time becomes extremely dark, when things are extremely dark at night, that's when you see the most amount of stars. And sometimes, in order for an individual, in order for a person, in order for a child, for them to become a star, or for them to become this luminary for other people to follow, they have to go through times of hardships, times of darknesses, times that are not going to be very fun. Nobody enjoys exams. But you go through those times. You're up all night long. You're doing your group assignments. I've been there, done that, right? It's not fun. But why do we do that? Because we know that if I go through this dark moment, if I go through this hard time, darkness referring to not the medieval darkness that we see in this room. But it's like, it reminds, honestly, it's like a Gothic lecture, right? Like perfect topic, lullaby. We should have done the 3 mice, where the Bloody Mary killed the 3 people, and that's our next topic. But that would have been much better. So anyhow, so the idea is over here that you have to go through moments of hardships. Now, how do you find within yourself that motivation? How do you find within yourself that motivation? There's many ways. One of the easiest ways to do that is get a phone call from your dad or your mom to graduate, right? No way. So I remember when I decided that I'm going to go to a community college and I'm not going to go to university, man, that conversation went all the wrong ways that I wanted it to be, right? And it was like, my dad is like, beta, listen, you can do whatever you want, but engineering. If not, maybe computers. But other than that, you don't have a choice. I did not come to Canada for you to go to a community college and do arts, right? And I was like, no, but Dad, I want to be a pilot. I want to do arts. This is my passion. Baba, please. Then I went to my mom. Mom is like, and she's like, go talk to Baba. And the conversation was like, it's like, so quick fix for this, if you get ever demotivated, and just tell your parents, I don't want to go to the exams, and see how quickly you'll be fixed up. You'll be even shocked, they might drive down. Take their car and they might drive down to meet you. Hi, beta, how are you? Exams, huh? Come, I'll teach you some exams. It's like, I'll make parathas for you, right? But the real thing is, that's one way. The other way is that you're intrinsically, inside of you, you're driven to do something great in life. You have a passion, you have a goal. So you're intrinsically driven. So for you, it's not the degree, degree is just a milestone. You want to reach somewhere. And such people are very few. The third way is, you look into the lives of people that went through such difficult times, how they responded, what were some of their statements, what was the philosophy that they were operating on, and then you get that motivation to carry on through those hard times. But if any one of you did not go through any of these hard moments within your lives, then know for a fact that you're not going to be able to do something great in life. It's not going to happen. There's an analogy for business, but it applies to real life too. People who start off big businesses right away, 90% of them statistically fail because they don't have experience to do a small business. But people that take a small idea and grow it chunk by chunk, step by step, eventually become successful. All the businesses that are established for long periods of time, 100 years or so, you notice them, they all started with what? Humble beginnings. It was just one guy with like a spatula standing at a burger shop saying, I'm going to flip burgers. And then he turned it into Fuddruckers or Fat Burger, I don't know what, Five Guys. You guys have Five Guys here, right? I saw it right in front of my hotel rooms, Five Guys. I'm like, wish it was halal. But then I said to myself, alhamdulillah, it's opening next month in Riyadh. So then I can go and try it out. So today we're going to look into one of these stars and their life, and a particular moment in his life where he decided that he is going to become firm like a stone, and he's not going to change his opinion, no matter what they do to him. Because he believed that him changing his opinion is going to harm the greater ummah, the whole ummah. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 people that are credited scholarly, Islamically in Sharia, in the books. They're credited to have saved Islam from being a totally different religion. I.e., they saved Islam from tashweeh. They call it, from change. Drastic change in the principles of Islam. The first person was who? Anyone? First person was one of the Sahabis. He was one of the 4 Sahabis. Abu Bakr, yes. Wild guess. Good one. Abu Bakr. What did he do? Anyone? What did he do to protect Islam for us today? Zakat? Zakat. No. So Abu Bakr's thing was, yes, he did collect the Quran, but the thing that protected Islam was, there was a tribe outside of Medina, they said, we're not going to pay zakat. Zakat is only it was for Prophet ﷺ, and we're not going to pay anything. So Abu Bakr, he took the harshest stance ever. And he said, anybody that says they're not going to pay zakat, I'm going to take the army of Muslims and I'm going to go and fight them because they have left Islam. It's one of the 5 pillars. And right after the death of Prophet ﷺ. The second person credited to have saved the true aqeedah that we get today, the true Islam and the true belief, was who? Ahmad ibn Hanbal, mashallah, good. Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And what did he do? What was the thing? We'll talk about it right now. But before we get to the point of the step, his life is something, for every single, especially if you are studying in universities, if there's any imam that you want to study their life, it's the life of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. It's full of trials and tribulations, and it's very similar to what Muslims are going through in the world today, his life. And you can draw a lot of parallels for yourself. IIPH have written a very nice book on him. It's called Islamic International Printing House, IIPH. They have a book on him, Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And not a lot of lecture series exist on Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, but I think his life is something phenomenal. He was yatim when he grew. His father passed away when he was young. And his mom had a choice to make. She had a choice to make that, am I going to get married and carry on a life of a normal mother? Or am I going to dedicate my life and turn my only son into a scholar? And she chose the second choice. And then she dedicated everything and every single resource that she had. And she made Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal memorize the Quran at a very early age. Then after that, the thirst and the quest of knowledge was instilled in him. So he would travel distances to just get one hadith. Can we close the doors? He would travel distances just to collect one hadith. Sometimes it would be just one simple hadith, and he would travel all, sometimes cities, many days worth of rides on camels, sometimes walking, sometimes blood would come out of his feet because of walking, because they didn't have Nike shoes at that time. And he would do all of that to collect one hadith, and sometimes he would arrive there and the person would say, I don't have that hadith. And he would just come back. So he became one of the strongest students of knowledge. He was very particular about who he selected as his teachers. But more importantly, you have to understand that despite him being so selective, he studied under 100 greatest scholars of his time. 100 teachers. One of the most famous ones is who? He's one of the 4 Imams. Imam Shafi'i. He studied under Imam Shafi'i usul. He studied under Imam Shafi'i how to extrapolate rulings, fiqhi rulings from Quran and Sunnah. Because Imam Shafi'i is the one who actually brought the science to the world. He made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah give me tawfiq to bring a science of Islam that will benefit the Muslims and that nobody has ever thought of. And Allah accepted his dua. So he created the science of usul al-fiqh, the principles of fiqh, i.e. the principles on which we decide which hadith to leave, which hadith to accept, which ayah is mansukh, which ayah is applicable and the rulings apply, which ayah do not apply. So the science of this was developed by Imam Shafi'i, and he studied the science with Imam Shafi'i. Long story short, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, so for us to get a clear picture, how did he live? His daily life, it's mentioned that he never bought more than 2 things in his life. Once he saw grapes and he really wanted to get those grapes, so he bought them, and once a watermelon. Other than this, he never bought anything to eat. Whatever was found in his house, that's what he would eat. Sometimes it's mentioned that he would have dried bread for 3-4 days. It was dried, and he would just take that bread and he would soak it in water and he would slurp it down. And then somebody would ask him, Ya Aba Abdullah, why are you doing that? Why you? You are Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Why are you doing that? And he would respond that this dunya is just a mirage. This cloth that I'm wearing, this cloth that I'm wearing, tomorrow I'll have something else on. But all I need is something to cover me. The food is all I need to something to sustain me. The most important thing for me is that I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and He's pleased with me. Sometimes he would even mention, he would say that, if it was up to me, I would live a life that nobody would ever know about me, anything. You see, he sought knowledge. He went through those troubles of seeking knowledge because of not becoming a famous scholar. He didn't seek knowledge so that he can one day be a star. He sought knowledge so that he can be the star in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one of us in our quests of becoming something significant for this world, for the community, keep in mind that we need to become a star in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. Wallahi, if you become a star in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there will come a time where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate your status. Man tawada'a lillah, rafa'ahu Allah. Whosoever humbles himself for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will exalt his status. Allah will bring him up. This is the promise. But oftentimes, fame, stardom, and now you have sheikhdom, right? You have sheikhdom, right? Everybody wants to become sheikh. Everybody wants to become a sheikha. You want to become this, globe-trotting, da'i, and such a nice scene created by them, the publicists or people who do marketing, and you find it's like so awesome. But in reality, wallahi, I have been there. It's just a mirage. It just seems nice from far. When you go and live that life, it's not good. I know people who speak on conference circuits and their families are broken. They're having troubles with their children. Their children are not on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of them, their children have left the deen. Some of them, their wives they used to wear hijab, but now they've been turned off so much that they don't want to wear hijab. I know my Sheikh Fadfari, Abu Suhail al-Fadfari, I used to study, I'm still studying with him. And when I used to study with him, he has written almost around 40 books on Islam. The last book that he wrote recently, he gave it to me. He said, Ahmed, take this book. And, I said, I took it. And he said to me, Ahmed, just remember one thing. Don't mention my name to anybody. The most important thing is that the deen of Allah and the knowledge of Allah spreads. As for my name, I don't want to be known. You see, when you try to become unknown, Allah will bring about a time where everybody will know about you. But if you seek to become somebody known, then you will never seek that. Or you might attain it, but it'll be very temporarily. How many people we know 5 years back, they were very active on the conference circuits, they were very active da'is, they were traveling and stuff. Today, you don't even hear about them. A new breed has come. But the real question is, how many from the previous generation transitioned with the new breed? A handful. Very few. Old-timers. The rest of them, they're all gone. So that's what was instilled in Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was focused on being connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was focused on attaining one and only one thing, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. right? And by the way, you know that the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest reward, greater than Jannah. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran what? I'll use Maulana for the verses. وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. The pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater, i.e. he was talking about Jannah, and then the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is akbar, is greater. So that's what he was embodied. He embodied this particular characteristics. Another thing, he imposed on himself something, which was he never took gifts from anybody. He never took gifts from anybody. Why? Because he had such a high status in the community, so people would want to come and give you gifts, not for the sake of giving you gifts, but the sake of building a network, building a connection. You know how some of the companies, they go out and they give you like a pen. Have a nice day, thank you. Right? And you get this pen, you're like, oh my God, it's a cross pen. No, they've already hooked you up. Next time they want to sell a marketing campaign, they know exactly who to send it to. Recently, I was reading an article, marketing campaign. Facebook bought WhatsApp, right? Everybody knows that? Common information, good. Why do you think they bought it? Why do you think they bought WhatsApp?
Competition.
Huh?
Competition.
WhatsApp is not competition for Facebook.
Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, but what's the other thing behind? What's Facebook into? Publicity, right? The article mentioned that they were getting, so initially they had like a huge bump of a lot of conversations, so they knew what people were talking about, so they could have targeted ads come to your Facebook page. But then WhatsApp came, as you mentioned, not really competition, but they took a whole chunk of the communication off. So now people did not use the messenger, used WhatsApp. And they talked a lot more on WhatsApp than on Facebook Messenger. So they needed to get into each and every one of our conversations to figure out what we are interested in, what type of foods do we talk about hijab pins, right? So they can, next time, you have a hijab pin ad showing up, like, why me? Or the brothers, single Muslim sisters, right? So they get this ad, why me? I don't know, why, right? So this conversation actually, that was the reason it was taken. And they acquired it for such a big amount because they could tap into our conversations and understand that. Anyhow, coming back, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was he imposed on himself, he's never going to get any gifts. While he was there, Khalifa Ma'mun was responsible. He was the first Khalifa or the second Khalifa for the Abbasi dynasty. And Abbasi, they called it Khilafah, but it was actually a dynasty. And Ma'mun, he had an idea. He said, you know what? I think Quran is not the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quran is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what was the logic he gave? He said, look, if it is kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it is speech, then speech is repetitive and it more than repeats, it renews itself. So the way you spoke when you were a small child is different than how you speak today. The way you will speak after you graduate from a law degree is going to be different than how you spoke when you entered the program. So that renewal took place, tajaddud. So he said, if it is kalam of Allah, then speech entails that it is going to have tajaddud, it's going to renew itself, it's going to develop. And Allah cannot develop, Allah is complete. So i.e., it cannot be kalam of Allah. It has to be creation. So that was the doubt that he created. Okay? It's a summary of the doubt, by the way. It's a lot more, but I just summarized it in like a few words. So he introduced this idea to a couple of the scholars. They argued and shut him off right away. He brought it to a couple other scholars. They argued with him, turned him off. So Khalifa Ma'mun, he kept quiet on it. He kept plotting and planning what he's going to do. Few years later, he became such, like his belief became so strong in it, because he was a person who used to read a lot of shi'r, a lot of poetry. He used to read a lot of literature, Arabic literature. So he was a person who understood Arabic language. And he had keen interest in it. So he said, you know what, he took a very bold step. And he said, every single alim in my kingdom, I'm going to test them on this new aqidah that he developed. And he went and he started with the 7 topmost scholars in Baghdad. And they all agreed to him. They all said, you're right. And he said, if anybody disagrees with this command, and anybody disagrees with this, aqidah that he has put forth, then that person shall be killed. So he forced the aqidah onto people. And then he took Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and 5 of his companions. 5 of the scholars that he used to be with him. From these 5, every single one of them was steadfast. They all stood their grounds. They all stood their grounds. He started torturing them. He started, telling them, listen, I'm going to kill you guys. You have to say Quran is the creation of Allah. It's not kalam Allah. You have to come out and say, it's not the word of Allah, it's the creation of Allah. So, one of the scholars, he gave in. They were left with 4. Another one of them gave in. Another one of them gave in. And now they were left with only 2. The 2, this was a young, unknown scholar. Nobody knew about him. And again, the second one was Ahmad ibn Hanbal. I think his name was Muhammad ibn Nu'man, the second one, if I'm not mistaken. So what happened? Muhammad ibn Nu'man and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, they were taking them. They said, you know what, bring him to me. So Khalifa Ma'mun did not have his castle inside of Baghdad, he used to be outside. How people want to live on the countryside? So he had his castle out in the countryside, his palace. So he said, bring him to me, both of them. On the way, the second scholar, he became sick. So he went to Ahmad ibn Hanbal and he told him, Ya Aba Abdullah. His son, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, his son was Abdullah, so they called him the father of Abdullah. Ya Aba Abdullah, people look up to you in the matters of deen. As for me, nobody cares about me. I.e., I'm an unknown person. I give in or I don't give in really does not matter. But if you gave in, then the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be changed. I ask you by Allah, no matter what they do to you, do not give in. He said these words and moments later he passed away. So now Ahmad ibn Hanbal is alone, all by himself, against all the scholars and the army and the Khalifa of that time. And all that is required from him to say is one sentence. Quran khalqullah. Quran is the creation of Allah. Khalifa Ma'mun said, do you believe in that? He said, Quran kalamullah. Khalifa Ma'mun took him and he started punishing him. Now, let me describe to you the torture that they put on Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal because of this particular thing. One of the tortures they did to him is they would tie his hands and his legs and they would stretch him apart. And they would bring whips. Okay, so there's different types of whips. Those that have multiple threads in them. The ones used by Romans. It's not just one whip, but I don't know what they call it, but it's called whip, like it's called sawt in Arabic. But so it's like a handle and it's got like leather, but threads of leather hanging out. And at the end of it, you have like a knot. So when you hit that person, that leather knot hits you as well as the lash. So they used that and they would hit him. They would keep hitting him until the person would get tired. Until the person would get tired, and then they would bring the next person to hit him. And they kept hitting him until he would faint. Then they would heal him up, They would take him to the doctor, get him healed, and they would bring him back. And they would ask him, غيرت رأيي? Have you changed your opinion? And he would say, Quran, Kalamullah. And then Khalifa Ma'mun would tell him again, take him back. Then, one of these days, Khalifa Ma'mun had enough of him. And he said to his people, today Ahmad ibn Hanbal is going to walk in. And I'm going to take my sword and I am going to kill him with my own hands. Because he was getting scared, this one guy and he's not breaking in. So as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was being brought to the door, one of the persons sneaked out of the door and he was crying. And he came to Abu Abdullah and he came to Abu Ahmad ibn Hanbal and he said, I heard the Khalifa say today that he is going to kill you with his own swords. He was crying. He said, by Allah, I ask you, just say Quran Khalqullah and save your life. You have family, you have so many people, you have people that follow you. Just say. He responded back, if this is your aql, if this is your aql, this is a level of intellect you have, فَقَدْ إِسْتَرَحْتَ. So you've become a lazy person. I.e. for him, it was a matter of intellect, it was a matter of azm, it was a matter of determination. And then he knelt on the ground and he raised his hands and he said, Oh Allah, if this Quran is your kalam, then take care of this Khalifa and his problems that he's inflicting on me the way you seem befit. Moments later, Khalifa Ma'mun passed away and died. Then his brother came in. Now the punishment of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal had stopped. So now he's doing, going through the roll call of prisoners to bring that guy. So what did you do? What happened? He's trying to catch up on what took place. Why? Because his brother was not interested in education. He was not interested. He was just an army general. So he comes in and he gets Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal comes to him and he says, أَتَسْمَحْ لِي أَنْ أَتَكَلَّمْ. Do you give me permission to speak in your court? He says, نعم. He asked, he said, ماذا دعا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إليه? What did Prophet ﷺ call towards? The Khalifa said, he called towards لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, وأنا أقر بذلك. I also confirm that. Can I ask you another question? The Khalifa said, go ahead. He said, what did your grandfather, Ibn Abbas, the greatest scholar from the Sahaba, what did your grandfather say when the hadith that he mentioned, because he was a muhaddis, he said, what did your grandfather say about the hadith of the person who came to Prophet ﷺ? And they asked him about Islam, and he said, Islam is, amantu billahi, and the 6 pillars of Iman. He said, I believe in all that. So he's trying to hint towards him that, why did you have me in prison? I have not, you and I are on the same page. Look over here at the wisdom of Imam. He did not start, do you believe in Quran Khalqullah or Quran Kalamullah or this and that? No. Fresh page. He understood that this person, for me, I need to start a different discourse. I need to have a different dialogue with him. He could have easily went and had the same conversation that he had with Khalifa Ma'mun. Ma'mun was a different personality. A lesson for every single one of us. Not every single, if you have a particular type of technique, not that technique is going to work with every single person. If you're trying to call somebody to da'wah, if you're trying to call somebody to bring them to Islam, if you have converted and you have family members, you're trying to bring them, try to analyze their personalities. Try to understand what are their interests, what do they like, what do they dislike, and then try to create your argument or create your discussion that befits their nature and personality. A lot of times, these da'wah courses, they teach you a technique, it'll give you a general technique. And that general technique might work 50-60% of the time. But it's not cookie cut, you can't apply it to every single individual. The best form of da'wah is the da'wah that you do with your own actions. Which is that, when we are coming for the musalla, and I don't know if you have a prayer area, that we put our shoes in a proper manner. So if somebody walks by, they get intrigued by how we have put our shoes, not repelled by how smelly the shoes are. Okay? Especially if you are on the brother's side and you have to do sajda, especially in universities, mashaAllah, brothers don't have laundry rooms and Allahu Akbar, and you're like, may the sajda finish as soon as possible because the brother next to you is on a different cloud, right? So your actions speak louder than your words. If you have your mother or sister that you've accepted Islam, but they have not, be the best son or daughter that you can be to them. If Allah has guided you, you are in hidayah, but your parents are not, the worst thing you can do is go back home after you've attended one of these intensive seminars and he's like, Dad, did you know today I learned that you're a mushrik? And by the way, all the actions they do is gonna, and by the way, the house that we live in is on riba, it's on interest, and it's haram for me to live in this house. I'm just living because, I don't have any other choice. Right? Your actions will speak louder. That's the best form of da'wah. Islamic da'wah, the technique of Prophet ﷺ was, that's exactly what Ahmad ibn Hanbal is trying to do. You put a clean, so you know that, if a person is a Christian or a Jew or any other religion, they have a glass of water, their beliefs and philosophy. Rather than me coming and, pointing, look at that, look, you got a black spot over there, look, all these faults on there, and by the way, your glass is even cracked, there's no way you're going to be able to, pass on this, and, you make fun of the person's, philosophy and stuff. Rather than doing that, keep that glass and show him a clean glass of Islam. And let him make the analogy. Let him understand the differences. But you present a very clear and clean picture of Islam. When you go to the masjids, one of the masjids, when I was coming in from London, we went to one of the masjids in my last trip, and we went to pray the first saf. The fire exit was not only blocked by chairs, but rather some brother, there was one extra chair, so he decided, the crash bars, when you open the doors, I don't know what you guys call them here, but we call them crash bars in Canada. The fire doors, and they have these bars you press and they open. One of the brothers had put a chair, so if this is the door, he had put one leg of the chair there, one leg of the chair. So even if anybody wanted to open the crash bar, they would die and get burnt before they do that, especially the fire that happened today. We saw the beginning of it. It was very interesting. But it didn't end very interestingly. Anyhow, coming back, so that's what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal did. He tried his best to present to him a clean glass of Islam. He knows that this Khalifa believes in Quran Khalqullah. But he's not going to, he's going to just, listen, common sense, let's come to common terms. And then the Khalifa said, I don't have any problems with you. But I found you in the prison. What do you want me to do? So then he said, let's call all the scholars. So he called all the scholars. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, you can't argue with Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He had memorized how many hadiths? Wow, way off, way off. How many hadiths do you think he memorized? He mentioned it himself. He said, I have memorized 1,000 ahadiths. What's that? 1,000,000 ahadith. He had in his memory 1,000,000 ahadith. So imagine, these scholars, young scholars trying to come and, argue with him. Like he destroyed them all. Then, one of the persons who was the kabiruhum, who was the big shaitan at that time, he kind of whispered in the Khalifas. He said, this guy is bid'i. He's ahlul bid'ah. And have you guys heard this word before? Yeah. Huh? Astaghfirullah about this bid'ah that you're doing. Bid'ah, big bid'ah. And then I met one of the brothers, he was doing bid'ah, and then I saw another brother telling the brother that what you're doing is a bid'ah. So this brother responded back, but in Islam you can do small bid'ahs. It's allowed. So each one of them philosophizing, what's the level of bid'ah and stuff. So this person came and he said to them, this is a bid'ah. This guy is a mubtadi'. So they took Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and they put him back in the prison. Then this guy told the Khalifa, listen, if you accept him and if you let him go, you're literally saying that he won over your brother and you. You really want to be that person? You really want to be that loser? He's like, no. And then he brought Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and he said, tell me that Quran is khalqullah. He said, Quran kalamullah. That point he brought the people, he hung him. They pulled his shoulders, like his hands, so far that his shoulders popped out. Both of his shoulders popped out. When his shoulders popped out, then they brought the guys with whips. And they said, hit him on the place where his shoulders popped out. And they kept hitting him and whipping him until he fainted. When he fell to the ground face first, he asked the guy who was whipping, go and step on his head. Step on his face. And this account is mentioned in so many books that it's like you cannot run away from it. Then Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was treated, he recovered, and one of the books it mentioned that he made another dua, and this Khalifa died. And then he brought another person. The other Khalifa came. This Khalifa did not last long, and finally Harun al-Rashid. Is it Harun al-Rashid? Well, by the way, these brothers, these Khalifas, I can never remember their names. They're like brothers, and they're all like Harun al-Rashid, Khalifa Rashid, Mamun al-Rashid, Fulan al-Rashid. So you just got to be careful with their name. Unless I have I'm going through notes and I'm teaching like a very intensive class. But for this, you guys can go references. You have references available for these, and it's like a known story available in English language. So anyhow, the next Khalifa came, and this Khalifa, he was on haqq, and he came back, and he lifted the imprisonment of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He lifted that. He let him go. When he was released, there was a huge crowd outside the palace. They asked him, what did you say so they let you go? He said, all I said was Quran, kalamullah. And I never said anything else. And then he was banned from teaching until this new Khalifa recognized that there's no harm in letting Ahmad ibn Hanbal teach. And not only that, he went and he took all the scholars that were complacent. They were partners in crime with punishing Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and he put them all in prison. Some he killed because their crimes were so much. And after that, the true message of Islam propagated from the doors of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was in prison for 28 months, almost roughly 2 years, and 2.5 years roughly. But in 2.5 years, 3 Khalifas died because he made du'as against him. And eventually Allah gave him that status today that he is called Imam of Ahl Sunnah. He is the Imam who protected the Sunnah, the Ahl Sunnah, i.e. the correct Aqidah till this day that we have. Yes?
Can I just ask what's sort of wrong with saying in the Quran?
That would be a Aqidah discussion. I would love to do that. I'll tell you where you want to, if you want to pick, if you want more on that, Yasir Qadi has explained this in detail. I think it's like a 2-hour lecture in this. Okay? And I don't think I can do anything close to what he did on that. Like I myself was like, wow, whoa, okay, I didn't know that. I don't know what sources, how he gets his information, but for me it was like, so there is a lecture that he has done. And if you can go back to that, refer to that, that would be better. Because that would be a very, a totally different discussion. Nutshell answer to you is if you create Quran and you turn it into the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then today, people are saying, evolution of creation and things change and stuff like that. When you say it is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have negated a whole bunch of ahadiths that existed in our tradition, because there were hadith Qudsi, which was the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, words of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the inspiration came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second issue that happens with Quran Khalqullah, if you say that, is basically you have removed one of the innate attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His speech. You have so many narrations of us knowing that Allah is going to speak to us on the Day of Judgment. Allah is going to meet us on the Day of Judgment. There is going to be a gathering where all the believers are going to be invited to Jannah. And then there will be sitting on these huge pillars, like these scissors, from the Roman times, these scissors, no, what they call it, Caesar, Julius Caesar and stuff. No, there's a word for it, Caesarian, I think. But I don't want to say that because it has another, that was like Caesarian. You had a baby, nice. That was anyhow, so you had these pillars and they would be sitting on pillars of light. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come and He would tell them, Araditum, are you guys pleased? Right? So all these ahadiths, poof, gone. Because you negated one of the most important attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Musa alayhi salam, the whole discussion of Musa alayhi salam, gone. Because كَلَّمَ اللَّهُ Musa taklima. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa directly in the Quran. And then there would be so many verses in the Quran that you will not be able to understand. So that's a nutshell answer that you're eliminating one of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the most important, one of the many of the most important attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, many of the most. Anyhow. So this was the story of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And the story itself, for each one of us, I would highly recommend you go back and check some sources. Find books that, if you can find some books that are, that you can find these stories in. English lectures, I don't know of. I don't listen to much English lectures. I used to. Most of my listening is in Arabic now, alhamdulillah. But I would highly recommend that you read up on his life, because it's one of those scholars that, you see the hardships that he went through and why he was able to stand up and what led him to be that one person that is going to stand in front of the storm coming. And sometimes, I'll come back to him. And sometimes this story reminds me of the verse in the Quran. And I think each one of us, when we walk away today, remind ourselves of this particular verse, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ And as for those that benefit people, فَيَمْكُثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ Allah will establish them, i.e. they will be implanted like pillars on the ground. وَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ And as for the foam, the foam that comes in the sea, فَيَذْهَبُ جَفَاء It's just going to dissipate. Foam from far looks a lot, but if you let it set, what happens? It just eventually dissipates. So the only thing that remains in the community, that's why I mentioned before that very few of the scholars transitioned into the modern day times today from when we were kids, when we were growing with teenagers, very few of them today passed on into the older generation came up. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rule is, if you are beneficial to people, Allah will establish you in this world. And if you're not, you're just a mirage, you're just a fake personality, you're just something, you're just like different from what public see you, and you're totally different when you go back, then know for a fact that your fame, your rise is going to be temporal, and eventually Allah will take that away. And not only that, if somebody seeks the knowledge, specifically the knowledge of deen, just so that they can become famous, then know for a fact that they are going to enter hellfire. Because it's the hadith, the 3 people that will be thrown into hellfire first. First person who's a qari, who comes in, he recites the Quran, he's so good in recitation, but he does it for gaining fame. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to get this person, he's going to say, Ya Allah, I used to read Quran for you. I was a qari. And Allah would say, no, you used to read it so that people would tell you that you're a qari. For verily this word has been said. And then Allah would take this person and He would command the angels to throw him into hellfire. Similarly, a person who sought knowledge so that he could become this, great globe-trotting person. But the purpose behind his knowledge was only to gain fame. And then eventually they dissipate. So remember that whatever you do, each individual person, try to find out what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you for, what gifts Allah has given you, and try to utilize those gifts in the best of your ability and the resources Allah has given for the service of deen. And remember, if nobody knows about you, don't worry. Allah knows about you. And if Allah knows about you, that's the most important thing. Even if you benefit one person, that's the most important thing. I know once one of the brothers, Sheikh Muhammad al-Arifi, he recently, mentioned in his Arabic lecture, he said that he saw a post on a forum, like a public forum. He saw a post that only 3 people had viewed. He took that particular information from that forum, and then he incorporated it in his lecture. Then when he went to give a series of lectures as he was visiting the Middle East countries, he mentioned that particular point many times to thousands of people. So many times you might put something on Facebook, you might put something on Twitter, you might see that it's very beneficial, that you might just get one tweet, or you might just get one like. But you don't know that one like might be a person that, now you can tell what that like is like, but who liked your page. But you don't know that one tweet, maybe somebody didn't retweet it, but somebody read it. And they passed it on to a million other people. And you got all the hasanat for it. So don't worry about if people are aware of you, if they're aware of your product, if you're planning to do something for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just constantly and consistently remind yourselves that I want to become sincere, I want to gain the pleasure of Allah. If you do that, trust me, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but if you do that, time will come where everybody will know about you. But more importantly, you would have established a connection with your Rabb. Wallahi, it would be such a khasara that people that are doing da'wah work today, if they go and they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah has not accepted a single thing. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said, subhanallah, he said, by Allah, if I know that Allah had only accepted one sajda from me, then that would be more than enough for me. And they asked him why. He said, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah only accepts things from the believers. Min al-mu'mineen. What's the verse? إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Sorry, min al-muttaqeen, and another verse it says mu'mineen too. Muttaqeen and mu'mineen. That Allah only accepts from those that have taqwa or those that are believers. So the key that each and every one of us need to strive for in every single thing, even if you're doing your degrees, strive for the pleasure of Allah. Figure out how your degrees can help the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You may not see it, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that dua. And find out your innate abilities. Don't just do what others are doing. Don't just say, I'm going to go and open another charity just because, it seems like interesting, people come up and talk and, No. Find something that is unique, that Allah has gifted you with. Utilize that and bring something new to the ummah for the benefit of the ummah. With this, my small, they're all waiting for 6. Is there more? No, it's not more. It's done. No, I'll just open the floor now for if you guys want to have a discussion, questions.
Keep the faith.